where it's the guy and the girl at the beach, and the caption says, "When you give your boyfriend a shovel."
No.
No, it's oh. Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study here at Faith Baptist Church. So glad to have you guys this evening. You guys continue to be in prayer for one another. Tonight, we are talking about Ruth chapter 4. We're going to close up that story. It's going to be a great lesson. Hope you enjoy it as much as I'm going to. I'm sure you will. If anybody has any prayer requests or anything you want to mention, be sure to list those things for us right now. I just went through all of our prayer requests that we have, and I don't have anything new for you. I didn't get much even on Sunday because a lot of our people were sick, not feeling good. I do know that I think Miss Christie's feeling better, so we can praise the Lord for that. She was able to go back to work. That's what I heard. But if not, Miss Christie, let us know. We'll continue to pray for you. She said, thank you for your prayers. Jeremiah got the job. Hey, awesome. Praise the Lord. I wasn't going to mention it because I didn't know, how things went, but I'm so very glad to hear that Jeremiah got that job. Thank you so much for the like. There it is. I appreciate it. But we were praying for Jeremiah for a couple weeks there, talking about an interview that he had, and we're so very, very grateful to the Lord for answering that prayer. That's always so exciting. I get excited about that kind of thing. Anybody who's ever been in a bad job interview just knows, please don't let that happen to anybody else. So I'm very, very glad for Jeremiah. Praise the Lord. Thank you so much for that. We've been praying for Beverly Hamilton for a while for her feet, and she has finally made some progress on that front. She's finally got to a doctor that has properly diagnosed her and has started some proper treatments, and so she is finally on the right road as far as recovery goes for that. And so just continue to pray for her, but your prayers are working. We appreciate that. Let's see. I don't think we've heard of anybody else, any new updates or anything like that. But like I said, if you have something, let me know. We'll be sure to update everybody. Let's see. So like I said, tonight we're wrapping up Ruth chapter 4 is where we're going to be at this evening. And we're going to be wrapping up that book and then starting 1 Samuel. I think next week we should be here. Yay for Beverly indeed. Good evening, Ryan. Good to see your name popping up there. Appreciate you. So we're going to be in Ruth chapter 2. I'm going to go ahead and hop over because I don't have anything else. But if you guys have something, an update or a new prayer request, be sure to let me know, and I'll let everybody else know. So I think this should... Oh, we're going to be on the wrong... I fixed it. I caught myself. Yay. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over. Hopefully this is the right one. It's the right one, but we're not on the Bible. I can fix that extremely quickly. Ruth 4. Nice. All right, so we are, like I said, in Ruth 4. Ryan Strange says, please pray for Maui. He has some sort of UTI again. Oh, no. So for those of you who don't know, Maui is their dog. And the sweetest little pupper you ever did meet. And evidently he's not feeling well. So whisper a prayer for Maui if you would. I've lost my second screen. Well, I can do it the hard way. I didn't know you had it. But we figured it out. So I am going to zoop this over here. Yep, we are indeed praying. So I have my notes and the Bible up here. So you guys can see that I do to the Bible. And I think we are good to go. So I'm going to try to keep an eye out for your comments. But I am also looking at a couple different things over here. So if there's a comment that pops up that I miss, please, oh please, let me know. Okay. So we've got 2 people on it, but I'm still not promising anything. All right. So in Ruth chapter 4, we're going to start in... What's that? Ryan said, thank you. Got him on antibiotics today. Okay, very good. So hopefully within no later than a couple of days, I would think those things will kick in and start getting him feeling better. But I'm sure prayers will expedite that in a great way. So Ruth chapter 4, and we're going to start reading in the first few verses. It says in verse 1. So if you guys don't remember, in Ruth chapter 3, Ruth went to Boaz in the middle of the night. He retained her integrity and sent her home to do things properly. And that's what they agreed to do. Naomi very excited about the possibility of a kinsman redeemer and so forth. And so he said, there is one nearer of kin than I. He's had to go meet this guy and make a deal with him so that Boaz can redeem him. If not, this guy would redeem her. But either way, she would get redeemed. So that was the very exciting bit there for them. So in verse 1, it says, then went Boaz up to the gate. Now this is the gate of the main city where he lived in, being, I believe it's Bethlehem. So they are going up to the main gate of the city. Everybody comes and goes from this one gate. And sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by. Unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. Now, if you had some random dude just tell you to sit down, probably you're not going to do that, right? But everybody knew who Boaz was. He was a very prominent member of the city, very wealthy man, and a man of connections. So people knew who Boaz was as he was standing there. So when he tells you, hey, come talk to me, that's a good person to, be in good favor with. Is a wealthy man with a lot of connections, even if you are the same. And so both this man, who it doesn't name yet, and all of the elders of the city that passed by as well, agreed to sit down with Boaz. Verse 3 says, And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. This isn't, this isn't literal brother. So this isn't like Elimelech's actual siblings. This means brother like kinsman, like he's our kin, like we're related to him. So he says in verse 4, And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me that I may know, for there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. He says, great, free real estate. I'll take it. Not literally free. He has to pay for it, but he's like, great, real estate. I'll take it. Absolutely. That's exciting. Then in verse 5, Boaz says, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess. Well, he's being a little, subtle with his words here. We're going to get into that. The wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. So what he explains there is that you'd have to marry Boaz and then have children in the name of the dead. Like, they're redeeming her back to the family and continuing that family line by having children with Ruth. Right? So you'd have to marry Ruth and then have kids with Ruth in order to continue that family line that passed away. So he responds in verse 6, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Evidently, he already had a family and could not take a second wife unto himself, as is the law. So we see a few things here. There's a lot happening really quickly. Let me break it down for you a little bit. In verses 1 and 2, we see Boaz very, very eager here. He wants to have this meeting to know what's going to happen, to move on so he can move on with his relationship with Ruth, his beloved. He's so eager, he is literally standing at the gate of the city. He won't even let this guy get inside. He hasn't even sent him a note or a messenger to meet with him. He is meeting this guy the instant he shows up, the only place he knows he will. He meets this guy. He stops all the elders of the city and this guy right then, right there, outside of the gate of the city. They have their meeting. Right? This is the eager anticipation of Boaz. He wants this. He wants this to happen now. He's excited about it. But as the conversation begins, notice he doesn't allow his eagerness to trip him up. That's a trick, let me tell you, because sometimes we can get so excited about something, we start to stumble over our words, or we say something we wish we wouldn't have. Any Harry Potter fans out in the crowd tonight? You ever notice Hagrid? When Hagrid, in that first book, is like saying stuff to the trio, the golden trio, and he keeps going, I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that. We do that so many times ourselves, don't we? Where we'll say something, and then we'll see people's reactions, and we're like, I shouldn't have said that. I could have kept that to myself and saved myself a little bit of headache there. But Boaz doesn't do that. Even though he's eager, he uses subtlety and he uses wisdom in his conversation here. So what we mean is he doesn't tell his whole heart right away, does he? He doesn't tell everything that he knows right away. Because this man might take advantage of him by using his love for Ruth against him. So he sets it up like an opportunity the guy's excited about. Hey, there's a piece of land that's available to you first and then to me if you don't want it. And so the guy's like, yeah, I would love this opportunity. I will take it. Sorry, man, but I want this really bad. And then he goes, okay, well, if you buy the land, you also take Ruth as your wife, and you have to raise up kids in her stead. And the guy says, yeah, I really wanted it, but I can't. So it comes across like Boaz is interested in the land, but is able to take Ruth as part of the deal, right? But he's more interested in the land than he is Ruth, but he's able to redeem Ruth as well. That's the way he's making it come across as. Where the truth is, he does not care about that land. He has no interest in that land, and all his interest lies in Ruth. Now, this is deceptive, but it's wise. Because like we said, this man might have used Boaz's love for Ruth against him. So he might have said, well, I could be talked into giving up my right for the right price. Maybe you could buy me out of the opportunity, which wouldn't be illegal or anything. It sounds a little bit like blackmail, but it's not. It would have been perfectly legal to be bought out of that situation. However, using wisdom and subtlety, Boaz is able to save himself that headache. This man might have taken advantage of Boaz, but he was able to avoid that problem. James 1:19 gives us a similar lesson as Christians in this New Testament age. It says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, James says, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. So this is wise, the Bible says in James 1:19. It's very wise that we be very, very quick to hear everything we can. Listen to everything you can. Absorb all the information that you are able to absorb. Then, when you speak, be slow to speak. Don't jump right in there with words and conversation. Take your time, think your words through, be wise, be careful, and then be slow to wrath. Now, why is that wise? Being slow to wrath is wise because wrath muddies the water. Being angry colors the way you see things to be in a way that they're not actually there. When you get upset, you invent things that didn't actually happen. You invent words that weren't actually said. Or you color everybody's actions or behavior or words to be taken in a way that they weren't actually meant. So wrath can sort of take away your ability to perceive things. It can take away your senses. You don't see as clearly when you're angry. You don't hear as clearly when you're angry, right? So if we're slow to wrath as well, we'll not only have heard everything and be careful with our words, but then we'll also be able to perceive it in the way that it actually is and then use that to our advantage as Christians. Whereas, and this is the difference, where the Bible said, Jesus tells us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, where we behave, not behave, but where we operate, let's say, the same way that some worldly people do when they try to take advantage of somebody. But where the world will use the information they gather and the authority that wisdom gives them to do things over other people, instead of doing things to other people to bring ourselves up, we will use that wisdom and that knowledge to boost other people up. Right? We'll use that wisdom to do good rather than just do good for me. Right? So that's the difference. It's wise as serpents. So it's similar because they're both wise, but where a worldly minded person will use that wisdom for themselves, I'll bite somebody else so that I can get the advantage. A Christian will use that same sort of, not same, but will use wisdom and will use all of these things we're talking about to boost the Lord, to boost other people, his fellow Christians, the people of this world that are in need. Right? So it's wise as serpents, but then it's also harmless as doves. It's using that for good. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please leave a comment and I'll try to clarify that a little better. But that's what we see Boaz doing here. It's what we see a lot of times throughout the Bible. We see Solomon behaving this way sometimes. We talk a lot about Rahab and how she behaved in this sort of same way. And then we see it taken in the wrong direction with some examples like Abram. When he's in Egypt and he's lying about his wife, that's to protect his own self at the cost of his own wife's dignity, right? So because the intentions are less than noble, that is why that is wrong. Because Christians should be using their wisdom to help other people and not just themselves. So they make this deal, right? He says, I can't redeem it. You go ahead and redeem it. And in verse 7 and verse 8, we see the weirdest sort of promise you've ever read about in your life. You've heard of the pinky swear, right? And you've seen the secret, handshake promises that kids do. In the book of Genesis, you may be familiar with Abraham and his servant and doing their special thigh swear. Grab each other's thighs and shake those. That's odd. I'm not going to lie to you. That's a weird one. But here, we've got one at least just as weird, if not weirder. In verse 7, it says, Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things, the handshake to seal the deal, as it were, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor. And this was a testimony in Israel. I'm using that. The next time a deal needs to be made, I'm going to be like, all right, hang on. There you go. Where's yours? It's going to be awesome. Y'all watch out for it. It's going to be so funny. They did a shoe promise. Verse 8 says, Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. There's no reason to bring that up except for it is so funny to me. That's how they sealed the deal back then. They might think it weird that we clasp hands and move them up and down together. They might think that that's weird, I guess. But that's the way they made promises, and it was a little odd. But in verse 9, excuse me, Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, so evidently a little crowd had gathered. A lot of people in the city had heard about Ruth and heard about her kindness toward Naomi and her hard work ethics in gleaning in the fields of Boaz and so forth. And a lot of these people, we talked about that last chapter too, how a lot of these people were rooting for Ruth because she's such a good person. That was a part of him saving her reputation as well, because she showed up in the middle of the night, trying to entice him. Hey, doesn't it look nice, me laying in your bed here in the middle of the night? And he was like, Ruth, this is why I haven't done it yet. Now, you take this barley and you go home before anybody catches you. And if anybody does see you, make sure they see the sack of barley so that all they think you did tonight was try to get some extra barley for you and Naomi. And hopefully nobody will ever know the real reason you came here tonight. And that was a very good thing for him to do in chapter 3, because here in chapter 4, a crowd is gathering because they're rooting for Ruth. They want good things to happen for this good person. Doesn't it feel good when you're watching the news, you're on social media or something, and you see good things happening to good people? You're like, that person was always nice to me. That person was always there for me. They always helped me out when I needed it. And I see this good thing happening for them, and that makes me feel good. Good for that person. It just makes you feel good when good things happen for good people, because it doesn't always work that way, does it? But when it does, it's an exciting thing. So a crowd had gathered all the people. Ye are witnesses this day, Boaz says, that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of this place, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, who Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this woman. In other words, lots of children, which was considered a great blessing. And so they're asking the Lord to bless this holy union. And they're so glad that these two good people found each other, are going to build a family together. And it's just such a happy day for everybody there here in Ruth chapter 4. All these great things happening. So the confirmation of witnesses is given. And you can almost feel Boaz a little apprehensive about having to purchase this right for himself. You can almost hear the tones of concern in verses 9 and 10, where he wants to make sure. You've all been witnesses. You've all seen firsthand. We made, so if this guy tries to back out of the deal or changes his mind later, you've all seen firsthand this was the agreement. We already handed over each other's shoes. Still a little weird. Unlike this nearer kinsman, though, these elders and witnesses understood and appreciated the heart of Boaz toward Ruth. They knew. This nearer kinsman had no idea what was going on. He didn't know who Ruth was, probably. He had no idea about the ongoing whisperings in town about her and Boaz and, how they've, batted eyes toward one another and so forth. But the rest of the town, they did. And they knew. And she was all they mentioned, and not the land or the mother-in-law. Did you notice that? Because when he's talking to the nearer kinsman, he's talking about the land, he's talking about the mother-in-law and the legal aspects of it. But when they bless him after the deal is made, all they mention is Ruth. Right? So they know who this is really about, and they know it's about love. It's about this thing of love. And it's a truly beautiful story that they've come together like this. So we've read through verse 12. What we get through in verse 13 is actually kind of a cool way to end the story. It's a real great happily ever after for everybody. In verse 13, we see a happily ever after for Ruth. It says, So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. So we see that, first of all, she now had a husband. I'm sure that she will always hold a special place in her heart for her first husband. I'm sure losing him will always be something, a pain that she carries as a mark of the love that she had for that man. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's this beautiful thing. But the way that she learned to love Boaz is a kind of relationship that comes along once in a lifetime. A truly blessed, divine, holy, sacred, special kind of love. And she was his wife, and she was proud and happy to be so. Same thing with Boaz. He was her husband, and he was proud of that, and he was happy to be so. We see that she had a husband. We see that she had romance in her life. That phrase, he went in unto her. That's the most intimate forms of a husband and a wife being together, and the greatest forms of that love being what we see later, that she bare a son. That is the product of their great love toward one another, is that life was born out of that love. That God so blessed the love and the matrimony they had toward one another that there was life created from it. And truly a blessing it was, and how much a blessing we're going to get into here in a minute. But it's a blessing not everybody gets. So those that do ought to be grateful for it. So Boaz, she's got love, she's cared for, she's respected, and you can see that Boaz respects her in the way that he treated her last chapter. He could have taken advantage of her, and nobody would have known about it. And he chose instead to retain his integrity and hers. So you know that now that they're married, he's going to have the utmost respect for his beloved. We see that she had a child, and then in verse 14, after it says she had the child, that we see Naomi and her happily ever after is obtained. You remember when she first came back into Israel? What did she say? She said, "Call me no more Naomi, call me Mara." She says, "I have no sweetness left inside of me. There's nothing left for me but bitterness." She was so sure that she would never have family the rest of her life, and that she was going to die alone, having nothing to love anymore for the rest of her life. She was a mother, and she was someone with a lot of love to give in this world, and she felt like, I will never again have the opportunity to give that love to anybody else ever. So she was no longer sweetness. She was no longer Naomi. She was Mara. She was bitterness. And then we see in verse 14, the women said unto Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel, and the half has not been told it yet. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, is better to thee than 7 sons. Which is better to thee than 7 sons hath borne him." She gained a family in Boaz. She gained a family in Ruth. She gained a family in her baby grandson, whom she loved and spent every day with. In verse 16, it tells us Naomi took the child, Ruth's child, and laid it in her bosom and became nurse unto it. She gained family in her baby grandson she loved so much. Psalm 127 verse 3 says, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." That having family is something that she thought she'd never have. And then all of a sudden she had more family than she knew what to do with. Life doesn't always go the way you expect it to. It takes twists and turns you don't think of, you don't expect. That's what life is. You know, having those things wouldn't mean nearly as much to you as they would until you have to work for them, until you have to continue to believe when you've got no reason to. It's the hard moments and the dark places in life that make the sunshiny moments so worth living. We have to have the darkness to appreciate the life and to appreciate the light. And Naomi was able to appreciate her family so much more now. You imagine that there were days when they lived in Moab when Naomi was just so griping her head off about the house, or, the way that her husband does, or, just all these little things. You imagine now that she's got this daughter-in-law, this son-in-law, this baby grandson. You imagine she complains about anything anymore? I couldn't imagine she does. If you're in the twists and turns of life right now, guys, I want to encourage you, hang in there. Because every tunnel has a light at the end of it. It doesn't seem like it does, but it does. Hang in there for the twists and the turns, because every tunnel has a light at the end of it. If you can just hang on long enough to get to it, you'll be glad you did. And I want to end with this last bit. In verse 17. This was not a fairy tale. Ruth and her beloved Boaz that she found in tragedy and their love together, this was real. Verse 17 says, and the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. Now, that name might not mean much to you unless you know genealogy, because Obed is the father of Jesse, a name that some Bible scholars will know pretty well, except then you find out who's Jesse's son. Well, Jesse is the father of David. From Ruth and Boaz to Obed to Jesse to David. Ruth was David's great-grandmother. If Ruth is in the, and think about this, okay? Because the reason this is such a big deal is because if Ruth is in the bloodline of King David, that means that she is also in the bloodline of Jesus. Ruth. And Matthew 1:5 says, and Salmon begat Booz of Rechab, and Booz begat Obed of Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse. Boaz's mother, we read there in Matthew 1:5. Do we see who she was? A woman named Rechab. Rechab. Now that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Could that be Rahab? The harlot Rahab? Now, it's been quite a few years between that and this. There's been quite a few judges between that and this. But I think even if it's not directly between Boaz and Rahab, if that's not father or if that's not son to mother, I think that's at least telling us that Rahab was a part of the genealogy between Abraham and Jesus. Rahab, the harlot, the prostitute that lived on the wall of Jerusalem as it was being sieged, was redeemed, made a part of Israel, and then made a part of the bloodline of Jesus. Talk to me about disqualification. Okay? Talk to me about what disqualifies a man from serving God. Ruth was not born a citizen of Israel. She was born in Moab, a place where a lot of people said that this Israelite family should never have gone to in the first place. They should have stayed in Israel. They shouldn't have married strange women. They should have stayed marrying Israelite women. And yet God chose Ruth to be a part of the bloodline of Jesus. It doesn't matter the circumstances of your birth. And it doesn't matter what mistakes you've made in the past. Nothing disqualifies you from serving God except for you. You choosing to give up because you feel like you're unworthy. Guys, we're all unworthy. I don't deserve to be able to do this, but nobody does. This work is so beyond us. This book is so beyond us. This worship is so beyond us. And yet he gave it to us anyways. He said, I know that. He said, but I still want you to do it. There's nothing that disqualifies you except for you. A harlot and a Moabite are two of the most prominent figures in the bloodline of Jesus, and yet they are both proudly mentioned in Matthew 1 with the genealogy of Jesus, because when it comes to God, appearances and reputations don't matter. All that matters is your heart. That's been the book of Ruth. And man, if that's not a lesson in a book that speaks to you, maybe you should go reread it. I don't know what to tell you. But I really enjoy this book and get a lot out of it. And I hope you have too. But yeah, that's going to be our lesson for this evening. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back on Sunday morning for our worship service. We won't be live streaming our Sunday school. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning of our time together. But we won't be live streaming our Sunday school this Sunday because we'll be having a very special prayer service. And I want as few people feeling nervous about being a part of that as possible. But we're going to talk about it and pray about it and see how it goes. And I hope it'll be a really tremendous time for our church. But if you're in the area, feel free to come on by and join with us. We would absolutely love that. So we will be back on Sunday morning for the Sunday morning service. And until then, guys, we'll see you next time.